The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, I managed to power my voice through the Monday show. I feel like I come out of the weekends with minimal recovery. It doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And I just got to get through one show to start the week because by day number 2, there are 2 of us. Dan Besbris, Adrian Benjamins with you on this Tuesday morning. It is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop ball presentation. Adrian, my man, how was your trip? You went out of town for a couple days, right?
Yes, I just got back from Kern River. I was gone.
Come on, man! You didn't tell me you were going to my old stomping grounds. You were at the mighty Kern.
I was at Kern River Canyon from Thursday to Sunday. And Dan, I think you can probably relate to this. This was the first time in a long time that I was completely 100% off the grid.
Isn't it
Meaning
awesome?
I had completely zero cell service, no phone calls, no internet. It was crazy.
Yeah, man, you can't get a hold of anybody if you're on the mighty Kern. If you can, all sorts of awful things can happen up that way, and no one will ever know. Did you guys listen to Merle Haggard's Kern? I believe it's just called Kern River. It's a ballad. I mean, this is like, I'm not a country music fan, but I lived in Bakersfield for 6 years, so you kind of have to come to know Buck Owens and Merle Haggard, and it's a song about about his best friend drowning in the Kern River. So I'm glad you made it home safely because, yeah.
I heard some terrifying stories about how the Kern River could get really dangerous. Luckily, when we were there, it was really mellow. Not bad at all. We had the kids with us, and they enjoyed it. My 5-year-old son caught his very first fish.
Hey,
so, yeah,
outstanding.
Was a great time. The only one negative thing, I was pulling a trailer, a 17-foot camper trailer for the very first time ever, and was pretty scary going up and down the mountain with the high winds. Pulling a trailer for the very first time. I was a little freaked out, man.
So you guys took the Grapevine to do the 5 and then cut east at Bakersfield? Is that how you got there, or?
That must be what we did. I'm not too familiar with the road, but we took, I believe it's the 395.
Oh, okay.
The way
so you came
to
up
like the 178 or the 14 or the 178, and then we cut it in the mountain.
So you actually came in the other way. You went up the east route. 395 takes you up through Adelanto, and then if you continue on that, you go to Mammoth. That's the road to Mammoth. I've done a lot of California driving. This is like the worst part of a podcast for anybody not from Southern California, but this tickles my heartstrings, man, because this is like, your drive was my life for so many years. Adelanto had a team. This is a city, by the way, for those of you listening in that don't know what Adelanto is. You shouldn't, by the way, know what Adelanto is. It's a city whose mayor has been indicted for corruption, and that's just like the latest in a laundry list of things that have gone wrong for the place. There used to be a military installment there. They built a minor league baseball stadium with a bunch of extra cash. Everybody had money in 1992 in California for some reason, and a bunch of baseball stadiums got built. And they built one in Adelanto because they figured there were going to be tens of thousands of just military dudes mostly because, let's be honest, yes, obviously there are women in the military, but still heavily male, with nothing to do and could just go watch baseball games and get loaded every couple of days. Well, the installment shut down. The city sort of never materialized, and it's like 40-mile-an-hour winds blowing due east all the time. It's considered the high desert. It's about 4,000 feet up in the middle of no place. It's like 114 degrees in the summertime with that blow-dryer wind, and you play baseball out there. It's just, picture Coors Field, but hot. That's the environment. And then also picture Coors Field and hot, but surrounded by nothing but Joshua trees for 14 miles. It's the worst. Sorry, Adelanto, you're the worst. I lived in Bakersfield for 6 years. Bakersfield is so much better than Adelanto. It's freaking crazy. So anyway, Adrian, I'm thrilled you made it back safely. I'm also, I'm glad you didn't tell me you were going to the Kern River, man. That's my old, not the Kern River Valley, but the Kern River does pass through Bakersfield. The Kern River literally passes beyond the left field wall of Sam Lynn Ballpark, where I worked for 6 years.
Oh, wow. It was really surreal to see that minor league baseball facility in the middle of the desert. And I have to tell you, those winds, you were not joking, man. Driving on that long, straight highway with those winds, I was pulling that trailer, and this thing was swaying behind me. It was pretty scary stuff, Dan, as a first-timer.
Yeah. That's brutal, man. I thought you would have gone the 5 and come up the hill the other way. But I guess maybe there was traffic or that was faster. In any event, I have one more question about Adelanto before we move on to basketball. This is something that all like weirdos of California have seen, but maybe didn't really notice. Did you see the giant billboard on the side of the road that welcomes people to Adelanto? And did you see their motto on it, the city's motto?
No, I missed it.
Okay, it says, "Welcome to Adelanto, the city of unlimited possibilities."
I did see that.
You did see that.
I did see that.
And you know what? It's fully accurate because literally not one possibility has been eliminated from what the city could be because there is nothing. You could do anything you want. There are unlimited possibilities because there's nothing there other than like a Del Taco and Bravo Burger. There's a burger joint in the parking lot of the minor league baseball stadium. So that's the part of the podcast where we just destroy the poor city of Adelanto. Well, welcome back. It's good to have you. Who are we talking about today? What do we decide? We're doing the Atlantic Division, but I can't remember what team we're doing.
We're doing the Boston Celtics.
Ooh, boo, hiss.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here, Dan.
Yeah, I know. We're a couple of Southern California boys talking about the Boston Celtics. We'll try to keep this thing as fair as we can. Obviously a team that is in great shape. You know, as much as it pains me to say it, they're in a terrific spot. They have Gordon Hayward, who didn't play this year. They have Kyrie Irving, who didn't play in the playoffs this year. They have Al Horford, who's just consistently one of the most reasonable and smart NBA players. I love Al Horford. I love him more than I should, probably. And then they've got this cavalry of young NBA players: Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier, my cowboy, Jaylen Brown, Golden Bear. They brought in Marcus Morris, who actually ended up playing relatively well this season. It's crushing for a Lakers fan. Although, obviously Lakers could end up with a whole bunch of superstars. But the Boston Celtics, as a franchise right now, are in business, and they have like 4 picks in next year's draft. Just from a franchise position standpoint, how many? I struggle, Adrian, and I'm trying to do this as pragmatically as I can. I struggle to find a team that's in better shape than the Boston Celtics. They're just set up to do whatever they want.
So, Dan, I agree with you 100%. Everything you said is right on. But what would you be surprised if I told you that I'm kind of off this team for next year for fantasy?
Really? Interesting. Okay, why?
There's too many mouths to feed on this team. Somebody like Tatum, who I had this year on a lot of teams, is gonna go into this next season kind of overhyped. Gordon Hayward's gonna be there. So Terry Rozier, who had an amazing year, had a great postseason. Kyrie Irving's coming back. So I don't know. There's just too many cooks in the kitchen, Dan. I'm not saying that these guys aren't going to be worth drafting. I think we're going to still get solid years from Al Horford. Kyrie Irving's going to be a solid option. But I'm not targeting these guys heavily just because there's too many mouths to feed on this team.
Yeah, the scary Terry stuff, that's obviously going to be an issue with a healthy Kyrie Irving. I do agree with you. There are a lot of guys on that team that need to be doing stuff with the basketball. Very quickly here, from a non-fantasy standpoint, Boston, the Vegas line was basically spot on, 55.5, which I thought was way too high for a team that had a bunch of new pieces playing together, and then one of those new pieces immediately went down. I know that most people think that Gordon Hayward being out probably cost this team wins. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that there would have been a learning curve at the beginning of the year that sort of didn't happen when he went down. And that's not to say that they won't be better with him at full strength, but they eliminated the adjustment period. So they ended up with Al Horford, who, as we mentioned, just kind of a brilliant big man, passing big man. Kyrie Irving, who's just a fantastic scorer. And then a whole bunch of guys who were better than people realize and play crazy hard-nosed defense. They ended up going under by a half game, which meant that I actually won that bet. I'll take it. It's a little bit lucky, but I'll take it at 55-27. From a reality standpoint, Adrian, here's my question for you, because I'm not 100% sure where I fall on this map. Do we think Boston is actually going to win more games than 55 next year? Are they going to go up with a healthy Gordon Hayward, or is it just going to be getting to this same number in a different way? Like, are they going to get off to maybe a slower start and then pick up steam as the season goes on, instead of having that wild November surge this year where they were just beating the hell out of everybody? It's hard to be the team that plays that tough every single night and hold it for an entire season, but maybe they're that team, right? I mean, like, we saw the Pistons do it a decade ago. Those teams do exist. Do they have room to improve, is my question.
My answer is yes. I think that the Boston Celtics will be the number one team in the East, with a healthy Kyrie Irving, with a healthy Gordon Hayward. I'm hearing that both those guys can be cleared as soon as late July.
Yeah.
So both these guys should be ready for the start of the season. They're really deep, Dan. I mean, they can rest some of these starters and lean more on Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. They are so deep, Dan, that I think that this team can definitely improve. I think they're going to get more wins. I think with LeBron leaving the Cavs, possibly, I think the door is wide open for the Celtics. I think the Celtics will be the number one team in the East.
Yeah, I have trouble arguing with it. Seems like the team that could challenge them is in their own division, and that's the 76ers. But to me, the Celtics are one good, solid step out in front of Philadelphia, and it's largely the defensive side of the basketball. So I don't know that Philly catches them unless Philly adds a big name. That's where that all shakes out. I'm very curious to see what Vegas sets the line on this Celtics team. My guess would be, with them posting a 55 mark this year, without Gordon Hayward for the entire season and without Kyrie Irving for the last month of the season, you might see Boston get a line of like 57.5, 58, somewhere in that neck of the woods for next season. And that's a really tough number for me, because that's close to where I'd see them ending up. 60 wins is a hard number to get to, man. The only team that did it this year was the Houston Rockets. Raptors had 59 wins in that weak East. Adrian, you make a good point. If LeBron heads west, then the East becomes, you're just picking off pastry teams left and right. The Hawks, the Magic, the Bulls, the Nets, the Knicks. Then the Cavs fall into that mix. You got like 15, almost 15 to 20 guaranteed wins against some of those clunker teams. So yeah, maybe they could go over. I wouldn't be surprised if that number ends up near 60. I think I'm still taking the under, because it's just so hard to get to that mark. But okay, let's talk fantasy stuff, because that's what we're here for. We can get into sports betting more when we have a little bit more information on the numbers and where players are ending up for next year. Adrian, you said too many mouths to feed, and there's something to that. With Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving both healthy, that pushes guys aside. let's talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about Al Horford first. Does his role change at all depending on who's healthy and who's not on this team? It seems like he's the exact same player regardless of the four humans around him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's going to have the same role. He's the main man in that front court. I'm hearing rumors that they're likely not going to bring Greg Monroe back for next. They're not expected to bring back Greg Monroe. So I do like Al Horford in that front court. I think, he's the main man there. But I worry that as far as where he's pegged on the scoring depth chart, he could be like the third, fourth option on that team after Kyrie Irving, after Gordon Hayward. So I'm a little worried that Al Horford's numbers could dip a little. Scoring, I think the rebounds will still be great. He's a really great center because he contributes in a lot of categories. So I think he'll still have those peripheral stats, but I do believe his scoring will maybe go down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. You know how I feel about points in general, right? I don't care about them, even the tiniest bit. This year, Al Horford, by the way, his numbers, 43rd ranked player in 9-category format. He played in 72 of their 82 games, 13 points, 7.5 rebounds, almost 5 assists per game out of the center spot, 0.6 steals, 1.1 blocks, 49% shooting from the field on 10.5 shots per game, and about 78% at the foul line, which actually, for Horford, was not one of his strongest career years. And still, he ended up right in that spot where I think people were satisfied, right? He to me is like a perfect ultra high floor, some room for improvement, some ceiling, but not the highest ceiling in the world. And if he's available for you in that same area, that 40 to 50 range, to me, he feels like a fantastic grab there because you just know you're going to get a dude who gives you a little bit of everything and doesn't do anything wrong on the basketball court. And like a worst case scenario for Horford is you draft him at 42 and he ends up at 49. That's a pretty good. I know that everybody's chasing upside, but I really like guys in that range that you can count on to actually give you the value you're drafting them for. There's almost no risk with Horford, and to me, that actually is a reward, if that makes sense. Like, you're not hunting for upside as a reward. The reward is there's no risk. That's worth a lot to me. Maybe not as much to you, though, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what other centers are going to be where he's like, if Miles Turner is right there where he's being drafted, if DeMarcus Cousins falls this year, I don't think he'll fall that far down. Well, I don't know, maybe. It would be interesting choosing between those guys, or even a guy like, will Clint Capella be in that range? And I don't know. I'd really got to think hard on if I like Horford more than players like that. I don't know, Dan. I'm really curious to see where he'll be pre-ranked and kind of in these mock drafts that I'm going to start doing at the start of the season, where he's going off in these mock drafts and what other centers will be there where he's going. I'm kind of curious.
That is a really good question. Ah, man. Okay. Horford versus Turner. I feel like I need to answer that one right now that it's on the table. I'm probably going Miles Turner.
See, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
But I don't know. I mean, do you really see Miles falling into the mid-40s? I know he had a bad season, but that's a long way to drop from a guy who got drafted. He got drafted in the top 10 in one of my leagues, generally inside the top 20, a more reasonable spot for him. But, boy, do you think he could really fall 2 rounds next year?
He finished as this is for 8-category leagues. He finished as the 67th player on the player rater. So I'm thinking he's going to take a hit on draft day, and I see him maybe going in that early 40 range. So yeah, I can see him being on the board when it's time to draft Al Horford. And I don't know. I have trouble there. I'm trying to see maybe who else. I don't like tanking, or I don't like having a bad free throw shooter, but someone like Andre Drummond. No, you know what? Andre Drummond should be off the board.
Yeah, he'll be off the board, I think.
Yeah. I don't know, Dan. I think
not too many in that range.
There could still be some pretty good centers on the board around that time. So I'm really curious who will be there.
Well, I got no problem with Al Horford. I'll tell you that right now. I got no problem with him. If he's there and the other guys are not, then I'll roll with him. And it's a nice center you can grab in the 40s. And I know you love your centers and point guards, so
yes.
perhaps I can tempt you here. I need to be like a carnival barker and step right up, Adrian. We got one Al Horford left on the table. We're in the late 4th round. He'll shoot, he'll score, but not very much. Anyway,
wait now. Correct me if I'm wrong. I love my bigs to block shots, and Al Horford. That's not his strong suit. He's not a great shot blocker. Is that right?
That is true. Middling shot blocker. 1.1 per game is, it's not nothing, right? It's not like picking up a center that's getting you half a block per game, because those guys are out there. Horford just does a little of everything. I love those guys that do it. He's a stuffing things guy. He only hurts you in steals, according to the various confidence value metrics on different statistical categories. Steals is the one where he's sort of sub-average, but as a center, 0.6 is actually not particularly far below the league average. You just, you need a guard that's going to get you like 1.5 to balance that out. And 13 points per game, yeah, that's a little bit below what you're looking for, but end of the 4th round, early 5th round, potentially, if he falls that far. My guess is that he does drop even a little bit further next year because Gordon Hayward is back. But it's pretty easy to get to 10 shots per game when you're kind of the only center. Daniel Tice, I don't think he's taking Al Horford's minutes on that thing. Aaron Baines, he's going to clunk his way around for 18 minutes, and they'll use him to knock some bodies, but he's not their solution. They used Al Horford on Joel Embiid. They used him at times on LeBron James. He's going to be on the basketball court, and for that reason, I trust him. I trust him with my heart. Okay, let's talk about the point guard spot then. We can work our way through some of these position battles, if you want to call it that. Kyrie Irving, who has had injury issues through his career, this one was obviously one of the bigger ones. He played in 60 games this season. Averaged 24.5 points per game, 4 boards, 5 assists, a steal, 3 3-pointers on 49% shooting and 89% at the free throw line. He was awesome. He was a top 15 fantasy asset before he went down. Then Terry Rozier cranked it up a notch. He ended up as a top 120 guy, but obviously much better than that when Kyrie was on the shelf. I know everybody loves Terry Rozier, but you said it earlier, Adrian. There's no room for him with Kyrie on the floor. How do they find more than like 18 or 20 minutes for Terry? It's not there. It's not like they can play him at small forward or something. He's not that big of a dude.
Yeah, I don't think Terry Rozier will get enough minutes to be relevant in like 10-team leagues. I do like Kyrie Irving. He's a very ball-dominant player. This is a very friendly offense. We know Brad Stevens very friendly for point guards. So you love Kyrie Irving's skill set. And I do like him for fantasy. I do worry about the injury. He, as you mentioned, he's had knee problems going back from when he was at Duke. So I do downgrade him a little bit on draft day. When you're comparing him to other guards like Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday, when you're comparing him to some other guys, I may knock Kyrie down because of his injury concern. But as far as what he's going to give you value-wise, I think he'll be a pretty strong fantasy asset for next season. And yes, Terry Rozier, I don't know. Can they play? Is it possible for them to play together in the backcourt? Is there times where maybe
yes.
Kyrie and Terry Rozier can play side by side?
So I think the short answer is yes, it's possible, but I don't know that it's probable, if only because they've got all these other guys that we've yet to talk about that fall into that bucket. Where, yes, probably they do want to get Terry Rozier some minutes on the floor, but that would have to be at shooting guard. So where do you play Marcus Smart? He's another point guard / shooting guard / he is big enough to guard small forwards. Where do you play Jaylen Brown? Where do you play Jason Tatum? If one guy is in, one guy probably has to come out. They're just... This team now, and again, Adrian, you made this point, so I'm sort of just arguing on your behalf right now. Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, all, you could argue, that's 7 guys deserve to be on the basketball court for some number of minutes. There just aren't teams that have 7 dudes with fantasy value. It doesn't happen. Mathematically, Adrian, and we almost don't even need to say anything beyond that, someone needs to either be hurt or just not in the mix. I mean, what's the upper echelon of a team? Are there any teams out there that, in a standard 12-team format, you've got more than 5 guys owned at any given time? Like, that doesn't happen, right? I mean, 6 maybe at most? I don't know that I can come up with a team this year that had 5 relevant fantasy players on it. Not even the Celtics qualify for that.
I'm thinking in deeper 12-team leagues, maybe the Warriors. You had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green. But
then is there anybody beyond those 4?
I'm thinking, I mean, I picked up Jordan Bell when someone went down, so I guess...
yeah, but then one of those guys was out.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm trying to...
Houston's probably the closest. They had 5. 5 guys that were inside 12-team. Harden, Paul, Capella, Ariza, and Eric Gordon. They had 5 guys that were legitimate fantasy values at any given time.
What about the 76ers? You had Ben Simmons, J.J. Redick, Robert Covington, Joel Embiid, and then Dario Saric.
That's a 5-pack too. I'll give you a 5-pack on Philly. Were there any 6s? I don't think there was a 6 out there. So, listen, okay, the point of all this is we may not find a team with 6, and maybe somebody out there listening can come up with it. The Toronto Raptors, you could potentially argue had 5 or 6 at 1 or 2 moments during the year, if you count guys like Delon Wright and Jakob Poeltl, right? There were brief stretches where those guys were fantasy relevant. Anyway, the point of all of this is, we digress. Teams don't have 7 dudes that have fantasy value over an entire season. There might be stretches next year where all 7 guys are decent, like maybe Kyrie. Maybe there's a week where they have 7 guys that are fantasy relevant, or maybe there's a week where someone misses 2 games and another dude steps into their shoes. But over the full 82-game stretch, it doesn't happen. There aren't enough minutes. There aren't enough shots. There aren't enough opportunities on a basketball court. So you kind of have to pick your favorite 4, maybe 5 if you really want to stretch it, and then go from there. So who are those guys, Adrian? Horford, Irving, Hayward, Tatum? Are those your 4 if you had to pick 4 on the Celtics?
Yes, I would rank it Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, and me personally, when a guy comes off of a major injury like this, I usually skip them until they get a full year under their belt. So I will be staying away from Gordon Hayward, not just because I don't know how he's going to respond coming back from the injury, but as we mentioned, out in the wing where he plays with Jason Tatum there, Jaylen Brown, just too crowded. But yeah, Gordon Hayward will still be drafted in most leagues or in all standard leagues. Jason Tatum's got to be the next guy. What an amazing rookie year he had. And, you know, one thing we forgot to mention is one of the positives from Gordon Hayward going down was the advanced learning that we got from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It kind of makes you wonder if Gordon Hayward played 30-plus minutes at the small forward shooting guard position all year long, would Jason Tatum have had the breakout that he had?
It's a good question.
Yeah, so you kind of have to look at it from an optimistic side that, hey, the Celtics, they really the learning that Tatum and Brown did just was at a really advanced level because they really had to just kind of get thrown in there and they really had to respond. So, there's probably only 4 guys here. In really deep leagues, maybe you're still going to draft Terry Rozier to see if he can get minutes in the low 20s. And then that's about it. Marcus Morris?
Nah.
No?
You know how I feel about percentages. I love them. I care so little about points, and I care so much about percentages. And Marcus Smart is... wasn't there a brief stretch on this podcast where I was giving out like the wet fart of the day award? Marcus Smart earns that award for his 36% field goal shooting this year. And 73% of the foul line. He did actually improve in his free throw shooting. No. And he gets so much credit on the defensive side. And yes, the 1.4 steals are nice. I appreciate that. But, oh my God, 36% from the field. He just doesn't do enough in other categories to make up for the fact that he's a massive, basically fantasy suck on a category. He's working against you. You're trying to pull one direction, and he's sitting on the other side of the mud puddle, yanking the rope the other way. It's a brutal game of tug-of-war, and you just, it's like drafting a punt free throw guy, right? And I know that 36% on 10 shots per game or whatever he was doing doesn't have the same impact as Dwight Howard going 5 for 10 every night at the free throw line, but he is among the worst. Marcus Smart is among the worst field goal percentage guys to own in the league, and that's why he ended up as a top 180 guy over the season, because one category is just brutally awful. I can't have it, and I won't have it. I think I would. You mentioned Kyrie Irving a little bit back, and I didn't respond to that. I think I would draft Kyrie next year. I'm with you on Gordon Hayward, though. I think I'm passing on him. There's just too much risk coming back from injury. He might be great, maybe, but there's too much. The red flags there are just waving in every direction, and it's sort of no reason to take that kind of risk unless he falls a long way, which, a guy on the Celtics with his name value, I don't see that happening. I would draft Al Horford again. Jason Tatum. All right, you talked about how you had him. You thought maybe he might be a little bit overhyped. He ended up with a really good season. Where do you think that overhype puts him for next year? That's where we need to go next on this show. Jason Tatum was a top 70 guy over the course of the regular season. 14 points, 5 boards, 1.5 assists, a steal, 0.7 blocks. 1.3 three-pointers. I think people thought he hit more threes than he actually did this year because of how good he was in the fourth quarter. 47.5% from the field, 82.5% at the free throw line. It's very rare to see a rookie with really good percentages like he had. But, I don't know, 10.5 shots a game. It seems like he could get to that number even with Gordon Hayward healthy. I don't know. Do people think he was better than he was this year because he was a top 40 guy for the first 2.5, 3 months and then petered off a little bit? Like, is that why you feel like his numbers are going to be a little bit inflated and he'll get overdrafted next year?
Yeah. Jason Tatum gets a lot of love because of his efficiency. He can hit the three, great scorer, better defender than I thought he would be his rookie year. So I feel like, had a great playoff. And so I feel like he's going to kind of come into the year overvalued. Finished 44 in 8 category leagues. So I don't know. I think.
Is that per game or total?
Total. So for the season, total for the season. So I think that people just have a high regard of him in their minds. Now, I wonder if a lot of people are going to feel the way that we do, that when you look at this team as a whole, when you look at this depth chart and you see all these guys, is the other people going to be smart enough to kind of downgrade him? I'm not sure. I'm really curious to see where he's pre-ranked, what happens in these mock drafts. If I had to guess, I'm going to probably put him in the 60 range.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I know that's, for both of us, that's not exactly, taking a wild swing in the dark, right? He ended up on a per game basis. He ended up in the 60s, basically. That was where he finished. He was so good for a couple of months. I think he was inside the top 30 for a couple of months, if memory serves. And maybe it doesn't. But I know for a fact he was inside the top 40 for a stretch. And then he did settle down. He had a run where he leveled off a little bit. And he ended up in the 60s, which is still solid. I do think, like you, I think it all balances out a little bit. I think the Boston hype, the rookie performance hype, the fact that everybody got pretty excited about him in the playoffs, like you said, I do think that balances out a little bit with the Gordon Hayward thing. But I'm with you. He probably gets overdrafted. I think you probably see him get taken in the 50s and 60s, which kind of wipes out where he could go next year. The percentages were already so good. It's tough to see what the next logical jump is for Tatum if he's not given more responsibility. It seems like the next logical jump for him is make him do more. Someone that efficient, that played that well right out of the chute, well, give him more of the load to shoulder. And in fact, it may be going the opposite direction next year. He may have less load to shoulder, along with a guy like Jaylen Brown, who we haven't mentioned because he's so awful at the free throw line on pretty decent volume that he too, much like Marcus Smart, is such a fantasy value suck that some numbers that he puts up will sort of overshadow the fact that he was actually terrible for your fantasy team. That's really where it sits with me. Let me give my quick recap here, Adrian, and then I want to get yours too. Kyrie Irving, I think he'll be pretty accurately valued. Al Horford, I think he'll be pretty accurately valued. I'm with you. I think Jason Tatum maybe a hair overvalued, pretty close to accurate. Terry Rozier probably overvalued. Gordon Hayward, who the hell knows? That was a massive question mark, which means that, like you, I probably won't end up with that many Celtics on my team, but I bet you I have a share of Al Horford somewhere at the end of draft day. I bet you I will end up with Al Horford. It's a wager you shouldn't take, by the way, because I control the outcome of that wager.
My problem is that we've never seen this team at full strength. We've never seen this team with a starting lineup of Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, maybe Marcus Morris. So there's just too many question marks. We just don't know what Jason Tatum's role is going to be. How many minutes is he going to get? What's this rotation going to look like with Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart also? One other thing, this team is really great defensive team. And part of the reason why they're so great is because of guys like Marcus Smart. So, these guys are going to get minutes. So there's just too many question marks. But the one thing that I think we can take to the bank is Kyrie Irving and Al Horford will be solid players. Everyone else, for me, is a question mark. Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, I think you would put them in that next tier of maybe. And then deeper leagues, 12-team deeper, I'd probably still take a shot on these guys late. And then after that, I really don't trust anyone else on this team. So it's really just Kyrie Irving and Al Horford for me.
And that's the Boston Celtics, ladies and gentlemen. Adrian, my man, good to talk to you. You had to deal with kind of a wacky iteration of Dan tonight, and you're a better man for it.
And, I don't know. I know there's no jet lag, but I drove a total of 12 hours this weekend. Oof. Stressed out, driving a trailer, so I'm kind of out of it right now. So
I think people are going to really enjoy this podcast because this is about as weird as we get. He is Adrian Benjamins. I am Dan Besbris. You can follow us on Twitter. If you can spell it, you can follow us. That's the old rule out here. Don't worry. As we get towards draft season, I'll start spelling it again on the podcast. But I know you guys are the diehards. You follow us anyway. You certainly follow me. So go follow Adrian. That's what I'm asking you to do on today's podcast. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoopball presentation. Back tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll be solo. Yeah, you're stuck with me alone. Just one more day this week, and then you got duos the rest of the way. Myself and Neil Rochelani on Thursday. Adrian, you'll be with Neil on Friday. We will wrap up the last of the teams in our grand tour of the entire NBA. Enjoy your Tuesday. Draft day coming up. That's later this week as well. You and Neil, by the way, Adrian, you guys have to talk about it because I don't know anything about it.
I am so excited for draft day, Dan. I'm super pumped, man.
I want to see this Luka fella. Doncic?
Doncic?
Yeah, Doncic. Is it Doncic?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan, Doncic, I don't even know how to describe this guy. He's got like some James Harden, some Manu Ginobili. He kind of got like a Ricky Rubio vibe to him. This kid's incredible, man. I can't wait to see him in the NBA. Really curious to see what team drafts him as well.
Then it is perfect that you and Neil have Friday's show because the draft will happen Thursday evening, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's on Thursday night? Yeah.
Yes.
So then Adrian and Neil will be breaking down the draft results on Friday's show as well as the last team in our Eastern Conference profile. And then starting next week, we're going to have to figure out what the hell to talk about. I got nothing. Are we close to free agency? Thank God we're close to free agency. He's Adrian. I'm Dan. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. So long, everybody.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.